All right, we've got 3 streams streaming live again. Hello there. Let's see if we can get onto my channel and see my new video. There it is. And I want to start a watch party. And that's how you do it. Oh, that's for different videos. All right, start there. All right, part 2 of the conversation. Oop, yeah, make sure this audio is off. Hi there. All right, so the first conversation, part 1, was about world peace in general, our actions that we could do for ourselves, our community, friends, and family, and putting an end to this sort of violent talk that's coming up. Now, the first one was very general. It's looking at sort of the big picture ideas. But reality is that the creation of a new society, one that is focused on peace and helping people, there's a whole lot of systems that are not working effectively for most of us. So for this conversation, we're going to look at the systems that need to be fixed or replaced. So I think it is best to talk about these things to put forth your ideas and things that your experiences, but I am no expert in any of these things. My suggestions are merely suggestions based on my readings, my observations, and what I think might benefit us, or at least what systems we really need to take a good look at, and some ideas and ways in which we can improve them. I think the best thing is that each one of these systems need to be created on local levels, meaning that we need to, in our community, look at our financial systems, our health and medical systems, our transportation systems, our waste management systems, food growing, agriculture systems, water treatment, etc., acquisition, education and childcare, housing, military defense, and communication. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There are other things, other systems that we need to analyze, but I think these are the sort of priority systems that address humans' fundamental needs. And I have opinions on all of these things to share. I also am hoping to get some feedback from folks out there. Again, you can watch this and comment on it at a later time too, if you don't have the time to watch this. I know this is the holiday season. There's lots going on. And again, I'm talking to 3 cameras, so apologize if I'm like, everybody. Yeah. So financial systems. So this is definitely not an order of highest priority to lowest. So just understand that the financial systems that we have right now, I think most people out there understand that the U.S. currency is really not worth what it used to be and not worth what it needs to be. And it's because we don't really base it on anything real anymore. They just continue to create more and more dollars. We keep printing them, and it's just making it all worthless. And so if we're going to adopt new financial systems, we need to have things to replace, to work, sort of intermediaries while we're trying to figure out what system that we're going to all adopt together. And potentially those systems could take over and replace them. So there are lots of systems that sort of currently exist locally that people have been developing where I live, but I'm not sure what exists out there for you all. There's this idea of life dollars or time dollars in a local organization here, and who knows what the current state of that is. But basically what it is an alternative trade barter system where basically you equate your hours of time for a numerical value, be it $15 an hour or whatever you decide on as a community, and you put that price on your goods and services that you trade. And so I could trade Bobby for some man hours working, doing something, and then Bobby can use those hours and buy some fruit off of somebody else. And we sort of trade things on a local level, keeping the US dollars in places where you need the dollars to be, and the local trade dollars in your community where you need it. So have a local trade system that you can create with your community while we figure out what to do with the mess of a system that we currently work with. The other part of the financial system that I think is important to discuss, I think is actually one of the most big issues that we face as a society and how to change it. I am not a financial expert, so I don't know, but I have some ideas, is the global stock markets. And so basically the main premise is a financial game that people play with money and businesses, and forces businesses to continue to become more and more productive and earn more money. And that puts pressure on the board, stakeholders, and society to continue to invest in things, even if they're bad, even if they don't make any sense anymore. It's outdated technology. It's bad for the earth, whatever. You have your money invested in this business, and you've gone now public with your business, and you're sort of required to keep earning and making more. It's sort of part of what happens when you take it public. So we need a replacement system, and there have been discussions, books written, and degrees studied about alternative financial systems and ways to deal with this. And I think a stock market system that rewards people who are thinking about end of use and what happens to the product when it's done, and the impact on the earth and the environment, on people, a system that doesn't just look at how much money that it made. And unfortunately, we don't regulate as much as we should, so organizations aren't paying for the costs of the harm that they do to the environment. That's what regulations really are, is putting fees associated to fix the mess that businesses make. So you have to, they're getting regulated by somebody overseeing them and saying, hey, you really need to make this safer for your employees, or cleaner for your customers. That's my cat stepping on piano. So I would love to see a new system implemented that we can take our money in a current system, and then eventually move it into the new system where we're investing in businesses that make sense for society and civilization, versus ones that just make money, even if they have to trick people into buying their crap. So like getting them addicted to it, et cetera, or making doctors write prescriptions for it, or whatever weird way people figure out how to make money, which there have been very many. We need to really think about that. And so I open up the reason why I'm bringing these up here is because I think it's something that on a local level, when you're doing your local work and doing your pay it forward work, that these are conversations that you have to have with your local people. Because again, I don't know the answers to all of the world's problems. I have ideas about what I could do in my community for my issues. I have some ideas that could be implemented on a larger scale as well. But for now, I'm hoping to inspire people's individual work in their own communities, starting today, like World Peace Today. We're going to work on this today. We're going to have a mindset of, this is really important, and I'm going to put my time and energy into it and figure out how I can have conversations with people who matter to me about these things. So the next thing, health and medical. Now, the way our current health and medical systems work, most of them, just doesn't incentivize and reward healing of people. And that is messed up, is really messed up, that it's not financially advantageous to heal people. So there's no initiative to make people better. Like, what in the heck? It's just, it doesn't make any sense that why we have these health insurance companies who are taking away the care that people need and making it impossible for people to get the surgeries and the medications and the treatments that they need to be healthy. And we have to pay into these insurances, and our employer pays into these insurances, and they literally are just taking our money to line their own pockets and to have this huge infrastructure of jobs. And in fact, they're stopping us from being healthy. They're making decisions against what our doctors recommend. It doesn't make any sense at all. I see health systems that actually reward doctors getting their patients healthy and seeing them less, where there's a fee that a patient pays to their local medical health system that is based on the amount that they use it. So there are people who are going to have more medical needs, more health needs, and they're in the end going to end up paying more than somebody who doesn't have a lot of genetic issues or health issues or bad habit issues that are causing them to be less healthy and cost more. I believe that each individual has a responsibility to sort of pay as much as they can towards their health costs. And I feel like people who are really sick, who can't work, should have some sort of support to make the costs more reasonable. But I think there should be the real cost of your health and medical should be based on your health. And if you take super good care of yourself, you have a financial incentive to do that because you will have less fees to pay towards your health. And vice versa, if you're, smoking and drinking and partying and not taking care of yourself and taking risks and being stressed out, then you're going to have higher costs. So there's it's a tax on basically not doing the right things for yourself. So instead, we shift it around. So we're incentivizing making good health decisions, good life decisions, because in the end, you'll have less fees. And now your doctor, the less times they have to see you, the less stuff they have to do for you, because they're giving you good advice and they're getting you healed. Now they make more money versus they make more money off of writing more prescriptions or more things that make money for the hospital. Like, that's really messed up that we have this system that's bankrupting people after person after person after person, this medical industry, where they're not even really doing things that are truly healing the patient. They're putting on Band-Aids and doing temporary fixes and giving them drugs so they don't feel the pain. And they're paying tons of money, and employers are paying tons of money, and the government's paying tons of money, and people aren't healthy. And so we need to rethink our medical systems. And I think they start by creating local networks of providers, people in a community who have the different skills that the patients would need, creating collectives of these people. So you have your acupuncturists and your Chinese medical doctors and your surgeons and your ophthalmologists and everybody who lives in a community. And so then you can see what the community is missing, and you have a local health budget that you have, you say, hi, I'm signing into the system. Here's my personal information. I am responsible for this. This is my, my monthly payment on what I have to spend on my medical treatments and medications and et cetera. And as I go into the system and new things happen, I end up getting more. It's kind of like a bank. I see it as like you're basically, the hospitals are holding this debt for you, and you have a basic agreement between the health provider organization that sort of unites all of these medical professionals and all of the resources they need to do their practice, the hospitals and the surgery rooms, et cetera. And that sort of, there's this overall cost for it, and you are participating and you're paying your share of that use of the system. So the less you have to use it, in the end, the less it will cost you. But then in the end, there's also either through the government paying the taxes to offset those costs, or all the users have to pay some sort of above and beyond fee that sort of maintains the system. Again, I don't have all the details made about all of these things, but the health medical system is a system that I think is super important to get an immediate handle on, because there are people dying right now and they're sick right now who need help right now, and they could get it. That there typically exists the help that people need, but there's often financial restrictions and paperwork, BS, and other things that cause people to not get the help that they need. Sorry, my kitten is eating my snack. Please don't eat my snack. I got a new kitten for Christmas. Transportation. So I feel like human beings waste so much fuel and so much time and so many, wearing down of vehicles, going one at a time, getting places, as well as spend so much fuel and so much wasted time and wearing down of natural resources, moving things here and there. A lot of this has to do with people not planning, not being thoughtful about their trips. They're ordering on Amazon and all these other things, making lots of trips. Also, that there's not good communication amongst us as a civilization with each other about, hey, ride sharing, I could use a lift here. Like, we should have very robust ride sharing boards. And I think part of it's because people don't trust each other, because people have been really crappy to each other. And if we're working on world peace and fixing that, then these systems will make more sense. Like right now, you might be like, I don't want to get in a car with some person I don't know to ride share. But if in the future we're a lot more loving and supportive, nurturing humans, then a system like that would make more sense. So just imagine through the lens of things are better, we're working on it. So you have a system where there's very robust ride sharing programs, and that I want to see a development, and it may already exist or may need to be something new built, that basically is a pedal powered multi-passenger vehicle that would also have trailers that you could attach to it, where people are pedaling and charging the battery systems, and maybe it's just fully electric, And there's, drivers who are hired by the local transportation authorities that will be the main, making sure everything's safe and going out. But people, you can go on, and if you are strong enough, there's pedals. People sit on this vehicle, they're pedaling, they're powering it, they're getting exercise. And there's, basically the traffic routes, decreasing the amount of fuel used in our communities, as well as getting people more active. So basically creating more, and then you can pull with the trailers, you can pull local delivery. So I want to see a whole new system of transporting goods where there are local hubs of human-powered traffic that's going in our communities, that are going down main thoroughfares, bringing things to local distribution centers where they can get pieced out to neighborhoods. But basically creating a whole new way of moving stuff where we don't have like 4 different trucks coming to your house every day, one for UPS, one for USPS, one for FedEx, like craziness that's happening right now. But everybody's sort of selfish and keeping to themselves. Hey, Kitty, you on TV over there? Just sharing and not wasting, and delivering things in a more thoughtful way. Things go to these main hubs on these main thoroughfares and get distributed to local distribution centers, and then there's somebody in your neighborhood that is like, I go to the distribution center every day with the trailer, and I pick up all of the things in my 3 or 4 streets or 90 houses or whatever each thing does. I pick up my items, and part of my job every day is I ride my bike around, I deliver these items. Now we've created a whole new job. It's people powered. It's getting people healthy. They're making money, and we're not using so much fuel, making the environment better. So that's and the reason why I'm sharing all this stuff with you is because I've been sitting on this stuff for decades, and it just sits in my brain and it's not being implemented. And if somebody in areas around the world or here want to help make these systems in their community, like take them. Like I would love to have more time in my life to go deeper and deeper in these things and to create them and share them and do it. That was actually part of something I wanted to do in my life. But now I'm committed to childcare and helping children get off the street and into childcare and into homes and getting fed. So I'm like, here, have this stuff, have this work that I've already done and things I've thought about, and maybe it'll benefit some communities, and that makes me feel good. Waste. Now, I believe that we waste so much stuff. It's unbelievable how much food is wasted in restaurants and there's such a different way of doing the way that we do things. And I think we should have some conversations, basically places where, the food is composted in all of the businesses and all of the homes, and it's being used for making more nutrition for our gardens, et cetera. The recycling system has to be much more thoughtful. Right now, there's a big issue with other countries aren't taking our waste anymore, and they're not actually recycling things that are supposed to be recycled. So we really need to stop and think about, well, how do we get rid of the system? When I lived in Northern California, there's a place in Oakland called Urban Ore, which is a brilliant, brilliant idea and place and design and thing for a community. And basically what it's doing is removing tons and tons of garbage from the waste streams, and instead having it be repurposed and reused by basically delivering to this large warehouse where it gets sorted. Oh, Kitty, don't step on a computer screen. It makes a change. So they're basically taking stuff out of the dumps, out of the recycling, and putting them in a big place so we can reuse them. So we can go, my vacuum doesn't work, I need such and such part. I go down to the local, base Urban Ore type business that I go find parts, so I can fix my thing, or I can repurpose it, or I can just get things used. It's just so many people throw away things that are totally fine because they're just like, I don't need this anymore, and I don't want it in my house, and I don't want to go down to the local charity, so I'm just gonna throw it in the garbage. We could instead be taking all that stuff out of the garbage and repurposing things and reusing things and recycling things, and that's where I think we should be going. Another one of the businesses around this is that there's so many boxes being generated now. Like when I came up with this idea 15 years ago, there wasn't Amazon doing what it's doing right now. Now there's so many boxes, and so many get wasted, and they don't have to. They could actually be part of this new reusing system where all of the boxes have a special code that is its size and its strength, and maybe what material it's made out of. And then these boxes are picked up by the local community reuse cycle, or whatever it's going to be, Urban Ore type business. And the boxes are all brought to a center, sorted out, and then local businesses buy those boxes back for their businesses, and they stay in their community. And so we're not having to make as many new boxes. We're reusing them for local businesses. So I think A business like that would make a bunch of jobs. It would take a lot of waste out of the waste streams, and also save businesses on their costs for shipping of things, because we can buy the boxes much cheaper used. Food systems, like, first of all, more organic, less poison, of course, that's the start, but also using local underutilized green spaces in communities, like people's lawns, etc. There's a lot. We can basically create these neighborhood gardening programs similar to the community gardens, and that should be part of it, where we figure out the needs, the business needs, the grocery needs, the restaurant needs for specific foods, and then we make it advantageous to people who have excess land that they're not utilizing, that they can use that land where somebody's going to farm it, and then they get some amount of vegetables or some fee for that. Basically, utilizing the land in an intelligent way to grow more of the crops that we actually need in our community, not necessarily just to export. We need more locally based, focused on meeting the needs of our local businesses and local people, food growth. So if there is some sort of major issue that happens, we have a resilient local food economy. Same thing with water. Where do we source our water? How are we cleaning it? How are we treating it? How are we making sure it's getting to people in safe pipes? Because there's a lot of people who have, long ago they invested in putting the pipes in their streets and their houses, and now they're no longer good, or they're contaminating people. And so there's a lot of money that needs to get invested into replacing and repairing the water infrastructure in this country and in the world, and finding more ways for local water access, and less bottled plastic bottles, of course. So addressing that system. The next one is educational childcare. That's sort of where I've been focusing my time on peace centers, and I'd love to hear other people's ideas on how to fix that system. I got a couple things I wanted to talk about that. So we're early childhood education, where most states and districts don't have free, no cost, public early childhood programs, especially for infants and toddlers. What one way to address this need is through the nonprofit that we started called Peace Centers, which would basically develop community-based neighborhood childcare programs that utilize the state's childcare subsidies, as well as donations from local communities, to sort of make sure that every child in a community has childcare, and every family who has children can afford it, until people get out of the cycle of poverty and can work, have a job, make enough money so they don't have to get the support from the from the government. So the way Peace Centers wants to do it is, like, for example, in every neighborhood, have a Peace Centers like ours here, where there is access to food, access to healthcare services, or at least a rideshare program to get people to the doctors, and then a childcare program where families who may not necessarily be able to afford the $1,000 plus a month it costs to send their child can get state subsidized care, drop the child off in a good place that loves their children and take good care of them, go to work, make a living, support themselves, get out of the cycle of poverty. So that's how Peace Centers for early childhood works. The other thing that's sort of I have two things. The first one is the way that we do high school, maybe even middle school education in America doesn't make a lot of sense for most students. And I think that we should talk to our school boards and our school districts and talk about a new way of doing things. Now, I have an MED. I got a 4.0 GPA in my master's in educational administration. I've been running schools and building schools for a while. I've read lots of the texts on education. I'm a Montessori certified elementary teacher. I've worked in the middle school and high school arena for Montessori a little bit as well. So I do have some knowledge on this. I'm not any sort of a master of education. I mean, I have a master's in education, but no, I don't know everything. But what I do think is that people learn best when they are not forced to work at the same pace as others, when they can work independently and with peers who are at similar levels and who are on similar paths and similar learning styles, working together to master the things that they don't understand yet. Okay. The reason why I like Montessori education is because it allows people to develop at their own pace, to work on things in their own way, in their own time, based on how they learn, and they're not forced to be the same as any of their peers. And what that does is it takes away all the pressure and the stress that a child and student would feel if they were in a school system where everybody's competing. You can get a failing grade and have to be held back and do all these special things where you're not part of the group anymore. And it causes a lot of anxiety and stress for students. And so what Montessori does is it takes that away because everybody's sort of working on their own thing. You have an environment set up that has lots of educational materials for all of the different subjects at the age levels for the people who be using that room. And then people who are loving and intelligent in the room with them who give them lessons on how to use the materials and how to learn the specific things and give them time to practice and develop mastery, and then check in with them. Hey, how's that work going? Have you developed mastery yet? Let's check and see. No, you're kind of mixing this one up. Let me give you the lesson again on this part so you get it right. So I think with our high schools, our public high schools, we kind of have the start of a way to do this right. So you have a math lab, you have science lab, you have chemistry labs, you have biology lab, you have all of the different specific learning rooms in a school. Okay, and in those rooms, you have all of the materials and resources and educated staff that fully understand the topics. And if they don't, they know how to find the answers that the students within their age group would need to know and learn to master to get to the next level. So you go into school, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you have your math time. You go into the math room. Most of the people in there at that time are about the same level. You have your teachers in there. And then James, for example, have to work on Calculus 2. So I sit down with my teacher, exactly where I'm at. I can go look on my online score system, and it shows exactly what I've mastered and what I haven't mastered yet. It has practice work that I can do at home or when I'm traveling. And I sit down with my teacher, and I work on my skills until I get mastery. And then at the end, when you graduate, you know what you know and what you don't know. Right now, when students graduate, they have zero idea of what they've mastered of the curriculum or what they haven't mastered of the curriculum. It's a big shame that we spend so much money on testing and we spend so much time on testing, and nobody knows a damn thing about these students. The parents don't, the kids don't, and the teachers don't. It's a shame. It's a bloody shame. But if instead, now the way the system works is that there's a really thoughtful assessment system that provides resources for the students, the parents, and the teachers to like learning materials and lessons and videos and all the things that you would need to teach a specific subject. Those teachers have those resources and they're teaching their area of expertise. So they're going to do a good job at it. And then the students are sort of there working on their stuff. So they're not being pressured to be like everybody else. So it takes away the anxiety and stress of having to keep up with other folks in their classroom. And so I'd love to see colleges and high schools and middle schools thinking about the way that they provide learning to students and consider this idea, like the idea of making schools that remove the anxiety and stress elements, because nobody's expected that at this grade and at this time you fully master this thing. Instead, you have this whole life that you have to master these things, and you do your best and you work at your pace. At the things you're good at, you can go quick at. The things you're not so good at, you take more time with. And eventually you, at the end of school, you have, hey, this is what I know. So your employer or your college or whatever you can say, hey, this is where I need to go next. This is what I need to study next, because my goal is to do this with my life. And this is my body of knowledge I've acquired. This is what I'm good at. I'm going to take this next class at the local community college, or get a job working as an assistant with this glassblower because I want to do this work and I need this next level of skill. So that's how my thoughts on education and childcare. I have a lot more. That's just some of them. Housing. So one of the things that Peace Centers wants to do, and it's linked to education and childcare, is that it's really hard, especially right now in Washington State, and I'm sure in other places, to create childcare centers. And the reason why it is because, and we've had this experience a lot of times, you have to find a building that is the appropriate zoning. If it's not the appropriate zoning, you have to either rent it or buy it and then pay for the process of changing the zoning, which may or may not happen, and it's a big financial risk and takes a long time. And your neighbors get to all chime in what they feel, and the hearings examiner and the city, and it costs a lot of money to do that kind of work. So creating childcare centers, especially in Washington State, is really hard. But what if we focused away from large childcare centers and looked at smaller community neighborhood-based childcare programs like Peace Centers? So we have 12 children that we take care of here. If there, every street had one or two little in-home family childcares, everybody who works, could just walk their kids over there in the morning and then go to work, using a lot less fuel, a lot less time transporting children around. And what it does is now people who like can afford their housing because they're actually making income off of their housing. So your rent is actually going towards the cost to live in a place and to have a business. If you take care of like 10 to 12 kids a day, you're looking at, $10,000 to $12,000 a month on average of income, which is a lot of money. It's definitely going to cover your. So if you only had 3 or 4 kids, you probably cover your mortgage or your rent. So Peace Centers wants to address the childcare issue in the world by helping create not just childcare centers, but actually focusing more around little in-home childcare spaces so that people can make a living off of their homes so they can afford their housing. Because right now housing is unaffordable, and you see that everywhere. So one of the parents can stay home and run in-home childcare, while the other parent does another job. The kids get to actually be with their parents, which is much better for the children. So you can make money to pay your rent, and then other people can go to work and support themselves. So that's one of the issues with housing. Housing is a really complex issue. Homelessness is a huge issue. There's a lot of mental health challenges around people who are homeless that need to get addressed first. We have to increase our capacity to get people off the street and get them help and get them rehabilitation. And if they're on drugs or whatever they need to get better, and then getting into working stuff. This is the whole thing we talked about in the first video about finding peace. You have to do that individual work. You're not going to be thinking about this stuff. And you're not going to be in housing if you are having serious mental health issues and you can't work. You can't live a normal life. The other thing is, now in Bellingham, the city that we live in, they're making strides on creating accessory dwelling units so that people can have more folks living on a piece of property, having people to help share with your work, make your rent less. So those kind of things are great. I love the idea of having more ADUs, more infill. I think that's the future. And if you can incorporate childcare into that as well, that's extra good. Military defense. I am a pacifist. If you watch the first video, you would know that. I don't think war or fighting solves anything. I've never actually been in a fight in my entire life. And I mean, I've got punched, but I've never fought somebody. And I was abused as a child and was hit. So, but I sort of took the opposite approach, that peace and kindness and listening could stop the fighting in my life, which for the most part does, except for oral disagreements. But I'm not getting in fisticuffs with people, which is good. But we spend so much of our tax dollars and our energy on military and defense because it's a huge industry. The biggest problem and the biggest challenge is the fact that we keep going to war and we keep basically getting military gear for our police department is because there's a lot of money to be made by the people who manufacture all of these military things, the weapons and the equipment for police and the military, and they want to sell them. And so they get these contracts with governments and local jurisdictions to equip the cops and equip the military and equip the teachers now. And these folks, when we look back at the last video, are in that sort of bad guys, because these are folks who want to make money selling weapons that kill people. It's a really messed up, awful place you have to be in your head, I think, to be a weapons manufacturer. If you're making your money off of making weapons that kill people, I mean, you have to be a sociopath or a psychopath. I'm sorry. I can't imagine a nice person who loves other people selling weapons to countries who are killing people with weapons. I just don't get that. But until we get rid of for-profit weapons manufacturing, which is the problem and it's what has to change, we need to eliminate for-profit weapons manufacturing. That's how I feel about this. But if people are going to make billions and trillions of dollars off of selling weapons, they're going to keep doing it. And that's what happens. They keep making weapons and they keep making wars because they got to sell the weapons. They need people to be afraid because they need to sell the weapons. And we need to be constantly having wars and being at war for them to make money. And so they are the worst part of this problem because they are financially incentivized to do the worst thing, kill people. And this is a really serious conversation we have to have. It's a really important thing that we have to change because it literally gets in the way of almost everything else being possible, because the people who are part of this are the worst people. I'm sorry, but they are, because they literally are making machines of death and killing and contributing to killing of people. So big deal. Like, that's a conversation to have in your local groups of how to do that. I don't, that's one of those ones I just don't really, I have no connections into this. I've never, like, my grandfather was in the military, my father was in the military, but my father was never part of my life by choice. My grandfather died and he was a little crazy and kind of an abuser. So I don't really know much about his story either, but it's just, if you guys can help me figure out how to fix this system, I mean, to me, I think the root is ending for-profit weapons manufacturing. All weapons manufacturing must be done by the government. Like, that to me is the answer. But that would be, taking all these private businesses and turning them public, which sounds great to me. But there'd be a lot of pushback, I suspect, by the people who are in that line of work. Communication, the last one on my list, again, not an exhaustive list, and not we didn't go into all sorts of details. So I am hoping to maybe make a video about each one of these independently with some more, maybe having some experts come to the show and discuss those things as well. But communication, now is a time where we have the best possibility to communicate, and I think we're having the worst luck communicating with each other because I think we're all so agitated and stressed out by the state of the world, which is a freaking disaster, that it makes it hard to communicate. And so I think in the area of communication that we need to create systems that work better, just ensuring that people aren't being constantly spied upon, so they have their privacy, that they can feel safe to talk and be honest with people. There's just so many incidences now of our devices listening in on us, and I think that's super unfair, and I don't think that is at all what should be happening. And so for me, just what I'd like to talk about in communication, just ensuring privacy for citizens, and at the same time, because I know part of the reason why people say we take away our rights around having, not being spied upon, and so we can catch the bad guys. I don't know that the good guys are the ones who are listening. And I think that if we police ourselves and are calling out the bad guys that we see in our lives, when we see people being abusers, taking advantage of people, stealing, cheating, that we call them out with our local law enforcement or whatever needs to happen to stop the thing from happening. That's how we can sort of get out of this surveillance society that's being created right now. So I think around communication, it should be more free, less eavesdropping. And I'm sure we can have a lot more conversations about that, but I'm tired. This is like my second hour of talks for the day. We take a quick peek and see if anybody else has contributed to this one. No, it's just a couple folks. But yeah, that was the second part of this long conversation that I'm going to start working on over the next couple weeks. And hopefully, this is where I see my life focusing more on right now while I got 2 weeks off, is to sort of share the gifts inside of me that just stay inside because I'm so busy working at peace centers. I can't get these things out there, and I think that these things might help some people, and so I want to get them out, and these are free for everybody to use. Take any of these ideas and freely implement them. If you have questions or want my ideas on things, I would love to talk about how you'd want to do this in your community. This is all a big part of my heart, because I want world peace. That's the number one thing that I focus my life on, and there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of things that we got to fix, and so I've put some time into what my thoughts are on these, and I know a bunch of you have got all your own places to fill in the gaps that I don't have, so I'm looking forward to these conversations and some more local discussion about how to make our communities work better for everybody else. Peace. Love y'all. End that stream. And then I'm going to end this stream.